Everyone say, hi, Otis. Very good, very good. Okay, now, if you thought that you were going to get to come to Move and Soothe and stay seated, you were very sadly mistaken. So I'm going to need everyone to stand up. Give yourself just a little bit of wiggle room from your neighbor. They will probably appreciate that, and you probably will too. People are lovingly already pushing space amongst themselves. I love it. It is great. All right, we might have a little bit of technical difficulty. We will sort that out. Until then, I will walk around, okay? Well, actually, I can't walk too far because they're recording. Oh, here we are. Okay, so Otis says we are going to stand tall and strong like a mountain, okay? So I'm going to lead you through this. I want you to stand tall with your feet together. Push your shoulders back and down towards your feet. Got it? Now I want you to stretch your fingers toward the floor. Very good. There are some very strong mountains in here today. We're going to hold it, and relax. Good. Now, I want you to take a deep breath in. Let that air come in your belly. There might not be much room for it right now, but you got to get it in there. Deep breath in. One more. All done with the mountain. All right, next. Otis says, we are going to stand like Atlas, holding up the earth. Now, I know you all don't know this, but some of these cards get pretty tricky, and I have blessed us with only the standing ones today. So max participation and appreciation goes a long way. Okay. Stand tall with your feet together. We're going to take it in steps. Take it in steps. You got it. I got people at the finished product already. I love it. Stand tall with your feet together. Take a big step backward. You might have to rotate with your left foot. Keep your toes pointed forward. Bend your right leg until your knee is directly over your ankle. Now, we are going to stretch both hands overhead and turn your palms in toward each other. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. You thought you were done, didn't you? And relax. Good. Deep breath in. One more. Very good. We are all done with Atlas. Next, Otis says, we are going to make a triangle with our bodies. Stand tall with your feet together. Take a big step to the side with your right foot. Lift your arms out to the side at shoulder height. Watch out for your neighbors. Neighbors, watch your neighbors. Bend at the waist to the left side to turn your body into a beautiful triangle. Hold it. And hold it. And relax. Deep breath in. One more. All done with triangle. Last but not least, since we are in a coastal state, Otis says we are going to pretend we are surfing. Stand tall with your feet together. Take a big step backward with your left foot. Turn the toes of that left foot out to the side. Lift your arms to shoulder height. Bend your right knee until it's over your toe. Look at you guys go. And if you want to hold it, Give me a little surf action. Yes. And relax. Deep breath in. One more. And you may be seated. Give yourself a hand. You just did Otis. Very, very good. Very good. Okay, everyone say, bye, Otis. How many are glad Otis is going away? It's okay. This is a great opportunity to tell you that not everyone will necessarily enjoy this, but don't you feel like a little extra right now? Yeah, you have oxygen in your brain. Your blood is flowing through your body. You just had delicious lunch, but somehow, by some short miracle, you're still ready to listen to me. And I am so grateful for that. So, a bit about myself. My name is Charity Campbell. I am a licensed physical therapist assistant. First and foremost, I'm so thankful the Lord saved me at the age of 15. I was a preacher's daughter who professed salvation at a very young age. I was 6 years old when I thought I was saved. I just knew I didn't want to go to hell. But never felt the Lord dealing with my heart. Struggled with doubt. Struggled with a poor spirit. And at 15 years old, the Lord showed me, hey, it's you. You're the problem. I'm your answer. So I'm so thankful that he saved me. I'm a wife of nearly 10 years. We have 2 kiddos that attend school here at Tabernacle Christian School. I have a 3rd grade daughter and a 2nd grade son rising. Like I said, I am a licensed physical therapist assistant. I have used that expertise and knowledge over a wide variety of settings. I started out in the outpatient world, so total hip replacements, total knee replacements. If there's any in the house, you probably hated your therapist for a little while, but now you walk beautifully, and you can look back and say, I still hated them, but I'm glad they were there. So the Lord allowed me also to work in the public school system in Tennessee and Washington County. That was really my first career exposure to the world of children with special needs. And I absolutely fell in love. I had been exposed to it through some mentorship programs and things like that, but that was just me on my own, like, what do I do with this child? And the Lord just worked miracles through that adventure. I'm so, so thankful for that. Did some time in home health, which also taught me a lot about the behind-the-scenes world. So very, very thankful. And now I am a paraprofessional in the Hope Allen Center for Exceptional Children. The way the Lord worked that all out is an absolute blessing. So thankful to be here, so thankful to be doing what I do and to be able to have this much fun at work. It amazes me every day. But the team that's here and what the Lord has allowed me to be a part of is nothing short of miraculous, and I'm so very grateful to him. My lead teacher, Lauren, she said, so you got to get up there and tell them how to be a paraprofessional. I was like, okay, I'll try. But what I told her is really in our role, and you think about this in any role, my job as a paraprofessional is to make my boss's job as easy as possible. Now, Lauren's job as the lead teacher in our classroom is to make her boss's job as easy as possible. That goes all the way up the chain, all the way to the Lord Almighty, who has granted us these wonderful opportunities. And Mr. Meese touched on that this morning, and it goes without saying again, but I'll say it again, is that if our goal and objective is to honor and glorify God, there's really no room for a sour spirit. There's really no room for me to hold a grudge because something didn't go my way. There's really no room for me to complain about the day-to-day. So if we can keep that in our perspective, especially when there's so many ifs and whats and hows and wheres and whos in this entire endeavor, it'll really guide our thinking. It'll really guide our hearts as to why this matters and to whom it matters. It is for our Creator, and that is the greatest honor and the greatest responsibility, is to do well with that He has given you. So with that, we're going to move to the I like to move it portion. Now immediately there's probably a sound bite that just went off in everybody's head. That was intentional because a lot of you are doing this now and you're awake again. So I'm going to go over structured movement breaks, what those can look like in the classroom. You just participated in one. Now, that is a very structured movement break that we utilized toward the end of our day. It was a very good time to just reset everything. We breathe in the good things that happen through the day. We breathe out all the crazy that may have happened through the day, and we go home on a happy note. That's how we utilize that in our program. But structured movement breaks, we talked about brain breaks earlier, they can happen at any time of day and look very different. This slide says movement breaks in the classroom give children with sensory processing disorder, ADHD, anxiety, dyspraxia, and other classroom challenges such as fidgeting, poor concentration, and daydreaming a much needed opportunity to reset throughout the day. So that's really what I want you to equate. I want you to equate the word break with reset, because it's not that you're letting them break away or escape or not have to finish or whatever you want to call it, but it's just a way to reset. Like, okay, what we're doing wasn't perfect, or maybe it was perfect, and you just need to reset before you go into the next thing. So I want you to kind of form an equivalency between those two words. And then what's more is the benefit of a brain break in class applies to all students of all abilities. There's a lot of gen ed teachers in here, and I'm sure you guys use them in your gen ed classrooms all the time. On rainy days especially, there are probably a lot of brain breaks going down. That's a good thing. Kids need that. We need that as their leaders. Sometimes we need a reset. So I encourage you to use those, and here are the benefits. It makes learning more efficient. When you can capture their attention, refocus them, what you're teaching may not have to be repeated 5 times. That is efficiency at its finest. Number 2, increases oxygen to the brain. I don't see anyone falling asleep yet. I am so thankful. You have lots of oxygen going to your brain. Number 3, it interrupts negative patterns. So that's a good thing. It may not always be that you need it to interrupt a negative pattern, but it is a resource if that's happening. If you're getting protest, whether that be verbal, nonverbal, physical, whatever it may be, that's a good time to interrupt those negative things, push the reset button, carry on with your day. Movement breaks also offer a mini break in instruction time. Lauren and I will tell you, some days we live to the next brain break and the next movement break because we need that time to prepare for the next thing coming. You can try to have it all laid out at the beginning of the day if you want to, but as we all know, do things always or seldom go exactly the way you plan for them to. So that'll give you that time to rebound and be able to prepare appropriately for the next thing that's coming in. The last one I have highlighted at a different color because we will talk about this later on as well, but the self-regulation of emotions has a chance to kick in. Our ultimate goal with trying to instruct and educate children with different abilities is that we want them to mature emotionally. We want them to mature physically. Yes, that kind of happens on its own, sometimes needs a little help, but we want them to mature emotionally, spiritually, and if we can help them do that with something as simple as a movement break that'll teach them to self-regulate, that's an easy thing to work into your day. So the purpose is to integrate the body's sensory systems with intentional movements or motor plans. I know I'm medical. Forgive me for that. The therapy background is kind of hard to hide. So these words, do not let them scare you. A lot of you will have experience with them. But I am going to talk about the 3 key pathways for a purpose. So that's proprioceptive input, vestibular input, and visual input. So we're going to go through those one by one. With proprioceptive input in a movement break, what's happening is the information is coming into the brain, which is received from muscles and joints to gauge where the body is in space. So when you were standing doing Otis, your brain knew that your feet were together to do the mountain. How did it know that? Because your muscles and your joints told your brain, hey, I'm together. Maybe I shouldn't be nudged by a buffalo right now because I'll probably fall over. So that was a lot of input, but that's what proprioception does. So the way that we would implement proprioceptive input into a movement break would be, by definition, kind of heavy work. If anybody's ever heard that term, a lot of their kids respond positively to heavy work. So that's going to be push-pull type activities. I came to Sarah one day so excited because I saw a little video clip of what this teacher had come up with that her student responded very positively to, and that was she would sit in the bottom of a TV rolling cart, and the kid would push her around the parking lot in a safe space, of course, but it brought him down. Like, he loved it. That heavy work really did something for his brain. So he is an example of that proprioceptive input. I dare to say, like, jumping on a trampoline probably wouldn't have done the same thing for him. You know, spinning circles probably wouldn't have done the same thing for him as it would have another child, but that heavy work was really good for him. You can do animal walks, so that's bear crawling, crab walking, if their abilities lend themselves to that. Push-ups, carrying things, weighted blankets, stack a couple on top of each other and say, hey, let's go for a walk to the exit sign and back, and see if that'll kind of help reset a little bit. And then we can do traditional stretches or exercises. Otis is probably more along that line of traditional stretch and exercise, just with a little fun gorilla as a side product. So you can utilize those as well. Now, going on to vestibular input, this is probably a lot of more what we think about with kids with sensory needs, is the spinning, trampoline, walking on tiptoes, things like that. So what this is this is your information received from the brain regarding gravity, movement, and balance. That's really what I want you to think of with vestibular, is balance. Things that will cause them to have to balance and make sure that their coordination is a little more on par than, say, an activity from the floor or something. So this will be spinning, trampoline jumping, walking on tiptoes. I included it, but we also don't want to encourage constant walking on tiptoes as a therapist because you can get heel cord tightening. But kneeling on the knees, so just changing their position. Anything, think head movements. So if your head goes to the right, or the left, or down, or between the knees, something like that. That is all vestibular input that your brain is having to process. And a lot of times that'll help take their brain processing power off of those things that are creating those distractions, that are creating all of the overload that's around them, and they can reset at that point. Lastly, we're going to talk about visual input. This combination of movement and visual information refers to several areas, including visual perception, visual processing skills, and hand-eye coordination. And this allows one to move through space and offer the necessary amount of force to complete movements in the area we are in. Now, I am a klutzy person by nature, so I get to work on this a lot just in my day-to-day to keep me not having a broken ankle. But hand-eye coordination is good. It gives them a specific thing to focus on. So a lot of times that reset needs to happen because their attention is so divided between so many things. Ms. Smith talked about it this morning, about the quiet classroom. And she's like, how quiet is quiet? Okay, somebody moved a paper. Yep, heard that. Somebody tapped their toe. Yep, heard that. Lord forbid somebody do Velcro. We're really going to hear that. So all of that, their brains are having to process what that is, where it came from, how does it affect me? So if we can narrow that down into a purposeful activity, that can help them dramatically throughout the school day. This is the zinger of a question. What works best for who? I would love to stand up here and tell you I have the magic formula to fix all of your classroom problems with a movement break. Wrong. I do not. They're not one size fits all. So I hope the categories help you. You probably were sitting here thinking about a particular student, a particular person. You're like, oh yeah, that would work for this one, but this guy would hate it. That would work for this one, but not the whole group. So tailor that. Everything is individualized. It is the whole crux of our entire program is working off of individualized programs. So that's okay, and it is needful. Hopefully this will just give you some tools to be able to go about that and be knowledgeable and feel like you know what you're doing, that you've got some good things to recommend to that student. Okay, guess what time it is? It's time for a movement break. All right, I'm going to have everybody stand up. we're going to utilize some of the things we just learned. All right, I want you to take a deep breath in and out. Head tilt to the right. I know the mirror effect got some of you. Head tilt to the left. Stretch your fingertips down to the floor. Bring your head back up. Roll your shoulders back. One more breath in. And out. And you may be seated. Now, who thinks that particular movement break is going to go great in my classroom? Maybe, but probably not. That one was tailored to my audience. So that's what I want to be the takeaway from that. I did not think that anyone would want to stand up and spin 14 circles. Any takers? No? Okay, that's okay. So tailor it to your audience. If you have a student that loves deep breathing and it centers them, use it. If you have somebody that you can do clap 10 times, use it. If you have somebody that needs 2 minutes on the trampoline, use it. But tailor it to your audience is the main takeaway with that. Moving on to our next portion of this, and I want to spend a little bit more time here, is I like to soothe it. Same song, just a different word. Key components for implementing calming strategies in your classroom, and we have heard a lot about this today already, but number one is ask the Lord for wisdom. If you're needing to implement a calming strategy, it means that something has gone off the rails somewhere. So ask the Lord for wisdom. If you try to attack that on your own, in your own power and in your own strength, it might work, but your success rate will most definitely be better if the Lord is guiding you through that process. Number two, I want you to recognize the behavior and the trigger that may have taken place. It's probably going to be pretty easy to recognize the behavior because that's probably what has alerted you to the fact that a soothing session is needed. So recognize that, pay attention to it. Ignoring can sometimes be beneficial, but a lot of times we're going to have to address it. We have multiple children in a classroom, so you're going to have to recognize it and possibly narrow down what triggered that event. Sometimes it'll be obvious. Sometimes it will absolutely not be obvious, and it'll take a little bit of digging. Number three, set the tone. So if you have an explosive event and your kid just exploded, it's probably not going to be appropriate to be like, what just happened? It's not going to work. So set the tone. If you are trying to create a calming environment, it's not going to bode well for you to ramp the energy to level 1004. So make sure you're set for it. Number four, and this is a big one, ensure all your students are safe. Sometimes that trigger can happen, and in the blink of an eye, you have it going on in your classroom, and you're going to have to make sure that everyone can maintain safety through that entire event. Number five, be firm, and number six, be consistent. Now we're going to go through each of these. I probably have skipped ahead with just the little blurbs I just said, but yes. So we're going to clear expectations. It is absolutely paramount to set clear expectations for your behaviors in your classroom. And Lauren did a wonderful job of this. We did have class rules posted on our wall. I think it's very important for our children to know what we expect out of them. How are they going to behave if they don't know what's expected out of them? How are they going to know it's appropriate if they don't know the expectation? So some of these examples may be: do not run in the classroom. Do not scream in the classroom. Do not throw objects, toys. Now, if you think some of these should go without saying, you might be wrong, but that's okay. Do not leave the room without a teacher. All of that needs to be expectations, and it would be best utilized with a visual to point to them. We have heard visual, visual, visual. It absolutely cannot be stressed enough. Post it, talk about it, let them know where it's at. Make sure that you have that visual because it ensures three things about that rule: that it's firm, that it's fair, and it's consistent. Whenever you have a rule posted and it's firm, fair, and consistent, it makes it the same for everyone. You know, it's not just Johnny's rule, it's the class rule. You didn't just break it, and I'm not mad at you. This is just the expectation, and now we've kind of got to deal with this. So going on to recognizing the behavior and the trigger, we use the zones of regulation in our classroom some. It works well for some children. Some of them came from public schools and they were familiar with it already, so we tried to implement it in our classroom as a tool. But can you see that pretty well? Maybe not. The blue zone is typically like where they're sad, they're feeling sick, just not themselves, but it's a little more mellow melancholy. The green zone is kind of like everything's happy, we're good, we're ready to go. Yellow zone is we're getting there, we're a little frustrated, we're starting to get outside the boundaries of what is happiness. And then the red zone is buckle up, Buttercup, we are there, okay? This is where we're going to need to implement that calming strategy full force. But I would like you to be confident in recognizing the yellow zone so that we can be proactive. So that'll come a little bit later as well. But those are our zones of regulation. Communication is absolutely key. Now, a lot of times with our population, we may be dealing with someone that is nonverbal. So that's going to look a little different. Utilize the tools that you have to be able to detect that. And I'll show you a little bit in our calm down packet that'll help you. But know what happened. How does that make you feel? How they feel will guide how you bring them down. If they're mad, you're not going to approach it the same way as you would if they're sad. If they're sad, you're not going to approach it the same way as if they're hungry. Because all those feelings have a place, and all those feelings have a different place that you need to be to deal with that. The why, the reason for the reaction, how do you think that makes others feel, what do you need, when are you ready, and where will we return to? So that'll come into place a little bit later too, especially with exiting the classroom due to a behavior, and I'll cover that in just a moment. So setting the tone, I did cover this one and get a little bit ahead. But your reaction to a situation will only be magnified by the student. Like they will come at you and say, okay, I'll do you one better if you let them. So make sure that you're in a good headspace. Whisper those prayers all the time. Lord, help me. Lord, help me. Lord, be with me. Help guide my steps. Help guide my mouth. Help guide my mind. He will answer those prayers, and he will answer them fully and quickly and abundantly if we trust him to do so, and that is super important. Sensory processing in many of our students is either inhibited, delayed, or both, depending on their situation or diagnosis. The brain of a child with autism, for example, is known to have fewer neurons in the amygdala that's located in the brain, which controls the threat response. Ms. Smith touched on this earlier. The perception of threat dictates and can even produce the behavior. So I, of course, am fascinated with the medical side of it, but that's where the sensory processing disorder comes into play. There are actual anatomical structures that they are missing, those neurons that allow them to process the same way that you and I might. So when we say they have a fight or flight response, they really do. And the perception of threat, it doesn't mean that it's a life or death situation. I might be the threat. I might be the threat that I'm about to interrupt something that this child's doing that they really like. I am immediately a threat. So they have to perceive that and process it like, how am I going to handle this lady that's trying to take me away from iPad? So using timers, the first then stuff that we talked about earlier, those kinds of things can set you up for success to decrease that threat level. To what extent am I going to fight, flight, or freeze? Some children and students, they may just go a little bit this way and then bounce right back. Some may go 0 to 100 very quickly, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get back. And that's okay, but just know your students and know that it might take that. But by keeping your reaction calm and measured, you will eliminate an additional threat or trigger for the student to process. Because if something's already happened, there's a threat perceived, their brain is trying to figure out how to respond to it, and then you come in just blazing hot. Okay, there's a new threat here. And now they're every which way, and we're not helping them. We're actually contributing to the issue. So by keeping ourselves in check, we can help that dramatically. Ensuring all students are safe. So I want to spend a little bit of time here. Some interventions for calming techniques that we can use in the classroom would be an example of a calming corner. We do have a calming corner in our class. If you guys got to see it with the tent set up, we've got blankets right there. There's headphones right there. They may be able to utilize that. If you saw the blue chair with the kind of like knee rest pedestal thing, we call that our hug chair. But one of our students particularly likes that chair. So it's not like a timeout chair. It's just somewhere they feel safe. A one-on-one talk, one of our students does best if we just chat it out and try to get to the bottom of it. And she thrives on the fact that there's not divided attention, that she's getting my full attention. We're going to figure this out together. And never have we had to leave the classroom for an interaction like that. Sometimes it's done in a minute. Sometimes it takes 7 or 8 minutes before we can turn the page on that, but she responds very well to that. Consequences if applicable and appropriate. So by consequences, what I'm talking about is like Lauren talked about with the behavior tracker. Okay, we really did not do our best during music class. Bible, you crushed it. Music, we didn't do, what we were expected to do. We didn't have participation. That was a clear expectation that you stand when the class stands and try to participate in music to the best of your ability. Now, accommodations may be in place for that. They maybe get to stand and fidget or stand for 10 seconds versus standing for 5 minutes like the rest of the class is doing. But I do think that those expectations will help them. Mainstreaming, we definitely want that. So consequences, if applicable, they can just look like they didn't earn their sticker for that class. I'm not talking about timeout or recess or necessarily all of that, but just something they understand is, okay, this, you don't get this. A plan to return to class activity. So if you're having to deal with something, this is our lifesaver. Whoops, I'm dropping it. And I think I maybe broke it. No, I didn't. Okay, so plan to return to class activity. So we use these timers for everything. So if you don't give them a clear cutoff, you might run that trail for a long, long time. Say, okay, set that up at the beginning. If it's a one-on-one talk, say, okay, we're going to talk about this for 4 minutes. I'm going to set the timer. You tell me everything you want to tell me in 4 minutes. If we're finished before that, you can return to what you were doing. But when that timer goes off, say, okay, it's time to turn the page now. The timer's off. It's time to get back to what we were doing. And if it's not going to go down that way, then maybe revisit it. That's going to be a case-by-case scenario, but that will help guide it to at least where they know I don't get to escape anything by having a one-on-one chat with Mrs. Campbell. I don't get to skip the entire writing class because I needed to talk for 35 minutes when really she only needed 3 to get back in the zone. So that'll help guide it for everyone. Interventions out of the classroom. So we utilize a cool-down box. We've got it in a pouch right now. I'll do some more detail on that with the next slide. A designated space. We do get to use that resource room that was downstairs, down the hallway from our classroom. If a student needs to exit our classroom, we typically will take them there or for a walk around the school perimeter, somewhere where it's safe. We've got cameras and everything going. Plan for assistance from support staff if needed. We're blessed to have our nurse on staff with us down in that lower hallway. She knows that we can call her anytime if need be. We've got our preschool director down there. So plan for that. Have somebody that you know will have their phone on them. If you need, call a friend to deal with this situation. You've got to keep yourself safe and you've got to keep that student safe. So be sure that you have a plan for assistance if you need it. A one-on-one talk out of the classroom. You need a plan for re-entry into the classroom, though. They can't stay out of the classroom all day. So you've got to have that plan in place. That may vary by student. And then your timer, again, is going to be paramount. Okay, in 3 minutes, we're going to go back to class. And we'll see kind of how that goes. So our cool-down box, I'm going to try to do this with mic in my hand as well. If a behavior happens to the point where it's either not safe or if it's like a screaming behavior and we have other students in the class that are very auditory sensitive, and it's not going to be good for them because then you're just setting off and setting off and setting off and setting off and you've got dominoes. So if we need to have somebody go out of the classroom, this is going to be hanging by our door, and it can be student specific. We just use these clear pouches, so it's a very quick grab and go. Lots and lots and lots of visual aids in here. So I've got a what's hurt paper I've got, I've got the I feel paper. So you've got emotions on there. I feel tired, hungry, sad, mad, worried. You can do whatever emotions are applicable to your class setting. What do I need? We've got visuals for calming sequences, so you can do deep breaths, you can do fist squeezes. We've got reiterations of our class rules. So this one in particular, we would usually have to leave for loud screaming. So we would say, we do not shout, we can breathe or sigh. So don't tell them they can't do something without offering the alternative for what's appropriate. Because then you're just saying, no. And that typically doesn't go well. So make sure that you reiterate, we cannot do this, but we can do this. I'm going to do it with you. And kind of example and mirror that which you're wanting out of them. Pictures of classmates and friends. These children are very empathetic, and they do not like to know that they've hurt someone. So if they hurt someone's ears by screaming, let them know that. That's their consequence, honestly. It's just the knowledge that I didn't mean to hurt this poor friend's ears, but I did. Oh, man. And that'll hopefully guide their behavior for the next time. May not work seamlessly every time, but they need to know that their friends are involved. They're sharing space. And then we got this out of somebody got the door prize of the emotions books. This is actually in one of the activity books, and we love this. So this is called a think sheet. So they say what happened, and then how does that make you feel? And then how does that make others feel? So I do love that because they have a responsibility to themselves, to their teachers, and to their friends. And hopefully they will let that all go very well. Okay, moving on. So once you've exited the classroom, gotten to your designated cool down space, revisit the key components of implementing those calming strategies. So I'm usually praying all the way down the hallway, like, Lord, let me know what to say. Help us get to the bottom of this quickly. Help him know that I love him. Help him know that you love him and that we want to try to get back to class and fix this. So you're going to go through all those steps again. Ensuring all students are safe, that's a little easier now that you've exited the classroom because it's just you and this one student. So they get your full attention, but make sure they're not causing you harm. Make sure they're not causing themselves harm. There's going to have to be additional intervention if either of those things are happening. So that's where the plan for support staff comes in. Whether you have to yell for help or call or something, have those people on speed dial, have that plan in place so you're not panicked in the middle of your own situation there. And always have a plan for reentry into the classroom. And that's going to be something like, okay, when the timer goes off, we're going to return to the classroom. Apologize to Miss Hickman. Usually that's for breaking the class rule because that's going to be what it's for. If it's a behavior problem, we're going to have a rule set up to try to inhibit that and finish our paper. So bringing the situation to a resolution is super important. These kids are finishers. They do not like to leave stuff undone. So by bringing it to a resolution, you allow them the opportunity to turn the page on it. They don't want to be in the middle of it all day any more than you do. Help them through it. Work past it and bring that to a resolution. With the be firm, it's not be mean, it's be firm. So I thought of 1 Corinthians 15:58, where it says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. And we need that reminder on a daily basis. This is not in vain. You may feel like you're spinning your wheels for weeks at a time, and then the Lord will just grant you that one little click in that kid that keeps you going. It's just like throwing a ton of fuel on the fire, and you're like, praise the Lord for that. So stay steadfast, stay firm and unmovable, in that you're not going to benefit them if you continually let them push you, and you're going to want to push back. So if we can prevent that cycle from happening just by being firm and consistent, it is so worth it. Be aware of your tone. Be clear. Again, Miss Smith, she really did a perfect segue into this. Most students will take your words very literally. If you ask for the front door to be shut, somebody's going to run up and shut that door for you. So be very clear with your words. Idioms, anecdotes, sarcasm, just leave it at home. Whatever you need to do, tuck it in your backpack for the day. It's probably not going to go well in the easy classroom. Be concise. Don't draw it out, and don't repeat yourself 500 times. That every time you give an instruction, that student is having to process that instruction. It starts the process all over again. Give the instruction and wait and see if it lands. If it doesn't land, maybe repeat it in a different way. But don't just say, you need to sit down, you need to sit down, you need to sit down. Right now, you need to sit down. That is going to escalate a situation very, very quickly. So be concise and be clear with your speech. Be loving yet firm, and be biblical. We are Christian educators. We work in Christian schools. Always bring that student back to the Word of God, because I assure you, if there's a classroom rule, there's going to be a reason in God's Word that we have that rule, even if it is just to glorify God, even if it is just to have respect for our fellow man, to treat our neighbor with love and respect. That is why we're doing this, is because that's what God wants from us. Do I want them to behave? Yes. Do I want the day to go smoothly? Yes. But more so, God wants that individual to be able to do all that they can do for the glory of God. Be consistent, helps identify patterns of behavior, can reduce meltdowns, builds trust, encourages personal responsibility. How? Be visual, visual, visual. Communication is key. You could use your reward trackers. Give them feedback. Celebrate the wins. Be positive about it. When they get something right, absolutely tell them. Tell them that they did an amazing job with that. Correction through self-discovery. I'm out of time, so I'm going to go very, very quickly through this. This is a technique you can use to turn a correction into kind of a teach and train moment. So it makes them have a sense of personal accountability. So some of our higher functioning kids, they understand that. Instead of just saying, no, that was wrong, ask them, how do you think that went? You just yelled at a teacher. How do you think that went? Allow them the option to tell you. So this is a scenario. John accidentally kicks Susie's foot while attempting to sit down for Bible. She becomes upset and retaliates and kicks him back. So what can we say? Susie, what happened? She's going to have to tell you what she did. How did you decide to handle that? Well, again, she has to own what she did. Is that the right choice or the wrong choice? Hopefully she's going to say wrong. They know. They'll be honest. I understand you didn't like what happened, but did John like how you responded? What should we do now? Usually that's where she says, well, I need to say I'm sorry. And then how can we handle that better next time? So that's a teach and train to hopefully foster future improvements on all of that. And again, we talked about bringing things to resolution. All of this is on your slide, so I'll skip through that. Be proactive about it and make sure that you're trying to be on the preventative side of things. And then what works best for who? Again, I wish I could give you a magic formula, but it's not going to look the same for everyone. One calming strategy may work beautifully for one student, and it may work terribly for the next one. So just know your kiddos, know what you can do to help them through the hard moments, and just always point them to the reason that we're doing that is to honor and glorify God.